I'm Harvey Hubbell. This is Show and Tell. And we're with a special mystery guest today, my friend, Sinclair Sherrill.
Good morning.
Good
Harvey.
morning.
Good to see you.
But we were talking about first thing I do, and I say, who are you and what do you do?
I am the founder of a nonprofit called Boon, which trains teachers in the science of reading, structured language methods, and provides scholarships for teachers, in addition to a 2-year-old, 3-year-old tutoring program called Pledge Literacy Interventions, which provides free tutoring for low-income and minority children, 40 hours of instruction. And we exclusively have as consultants Wilson certified level 1 and 2 teachers. So our teachers in Pledge are experts, and they are able to remediate a dyslexic, but we're deploying them to work with neurotypical kids that are unfortunately failing to reach grade level reading. So we train teachers, provide scholarships, and we provide free tutoring. And we're hoping to grow both programs dramatically. Since 2018, our scholarships, we've trained about 750 teachers or so, and that's climbing.
Yeah, so you're the hero of the revolution. I mean, you're the hero of the revolution. You're not just waiting for stuff to happen. You're a man of action. My friend Sinclair Sherrill is a man of action, and you're doing stuff right now. You're training teachers today.
I'm training teachers today without legislation, without taxpayer money. We're tutoring kids without approval from a superintendent or a principal, although we're working on accessing schools going forward because it's good to work with them if you can. But right now, we're just hustling, trying to be a go-to nonprofit that does this activity from the get-go. And it's exciting, but it's has many challenges because the private monies, citizen money, in this space is very limited. We're a country that puts $60 billion into higher ed, and yet our public education system, K through 12, rests upon local property taxes, by and large, with some federal monies, enough to meddle, enough to influence, but not where the lion's share of it is. And we're trying to kind of be a bridge to bring the private money in.
You just mentioned, and I think people who are watching this kind of know. So you have this federal money, you have this local money, but how come we're not teaching kids how to read if we have all this money?
Well, I mean, I guess on a national average, we spend $14,000 per tuition, if you will, per child.
Every kid.
So, give or take your locality. But as we know from what we read and the conferences we attend and people we talk to, we know that there's a massive, dire reading crisis in America, which is caused by a shortage of teachers trained in the science of reading, because graduate schools in this country don't train teachers in structured language instruction methods. And there's about 690 of them. And, the IDA has certified a few, some, and Wilson's worked with some. And there is change, but it's not the kind of change at the scale in which we need. And of course, my sense of urgency about all of this is, based on just the thought that these children fail very quickly to learn how to read, and they end up blaming themselves because for a while, as children are, they think adults can do no wrong. And here's this big school with all the bells and whistles and yellow buses and all the boss men and boss women, and they think it's their fault. And then there's, what are those outcomes? Misbehavior, unhappiness, tantrums at home, tantrums at school, drug use. Maybe the juvenile justice system is in the future. Most of the kids that seem to fail, before fourth grade don't seem to recover. They don't seem to get the chance to become grade proficient. And we're in a country with 126, 27 million Americans read at the fifth grade level or below. And, this is where, I don't know, we're like 30 plus in terms of reading skills, educational skills, math, science, and reading in the world. And we're not doing too well. We're doing a kind of a D- effort.
Well, one of the antidotes is having a parent that cares. And that's the biggest.
Huge.
That's the biggest thing. Having a parent that cares, that can all of a sudden start doing research, which they have to do, which is where Decoding Dyslexia comes in, and all these other advocacy groups, and people just researching, saying, how am I going to help my kid? Because I think when you and I were growing up after the Second World War, they manufactured jeeps and tanks and airplanes.
Cars with fins.
Yeah, cars with fins. They all came up, but they were manufactured, but we didn't have fins.
Yeah.
But some of us do, and some of us don't. So we're all uniquely wonderful. And so I think in the science of reading, they realize that we're not going to be mass produced as a population, that we're all going to learn differently, and that's the science of reading. Am I close? That's 50 years of research and all these reports. That's condensed by Harvey into that, and so you have to find. It's like me giving you a bunch of keys and saying, here's an apartment building. Find the right key for the. You got the right key, but they're not all going to be the same one. You can't get.
We have the know-how.
We have the know-how. We have the know-how
to individualize instruction.
Yep.
But those are people that are really knowledgeable and really, experts. But the rank and file, who haven't been taught the science of reading, structured language, instruction methods in school, are operating in a vacuum. They're operating in a cultural environment where balanced literacy, literacy-rich environment is prevalent, where the textbooks don't support structured language, where there's this assumption that reading is a natural thing like speaking, and it's anything but that. As Louisa Moats so aptly said a number of years ago, teaching reading is rocket science. There are, as others have said and know, some of us are lucky enough to kind of get it without delving into phonics and phonemes and everything that goes with that. But most children need that structured language instruction approach. And if we could reverse and change that, we would have a very different outcome in schools. And of course, if you can do reading well, you can do the math problem, and you can read the science book. You've got that threshold fundamental skill that's really opens the gateway to all learning.
Well, I just want to go back to what we said, because where we're saying, and what we know is there's going to be the kid who's going to come into class who just learns how to read and is kind of magical.
The minority.
And in those days, the teachers used to say, that's my prize student. Well, that kid, the dog could teach that kid how to read. That kid is just going to know how to read. So then there's all these other problems that are happening, and there's what we've also talked about a lot is there's a lot of things. There's your zip code. There's whether parents are speaking that language at home. If are you do you have a learning difference? Do you have any number of those things? So that's where it all begins to be different and separate.
And a number of people said that if you were poor, poverty was a barrier to literacy, which is not accurate.
Well, let's just talk about the difference between your brain and my brain, because because I find you fascinating on your
I find
numbers.
you fascinating.
On your
You're
numbers.
the man. You're the man.
No, you got the numbers. So
I have some numbers.
No, but you're
you know,
dyscalculia.
Yeah, my dyscalculia seems, well, you know, I realize that people really like numbers. And some of them, you know, the outcome statistics are resonate with people. But, you know, being the son of an OG trained reading instructor from the early 70s.
Yeah, talk about your mom for a minute. Talk about your mom and talk about her pedigree of hanging out. She was like Boston, right?
She Boston OG trained person, Massachusetts General
Cole?
Hospital.
And Dr. Cole?
Dr. Edwin Cole, not the nicest guy I've ever met, but I mean, certainly knowledgeable and one of Orton's original, I guess, half a dozen proteges. And she got that training, and she was a zealot. And
so you're kind of like dyslexic royalty. Even though you like books, but you got the dyscalculia. So this is what I'm talking about with these brains.
I love books.
We've taken a long time for us to figure out who we are. I mean, you loved books, but and it's funny because you are a numbers guy, but you're dyscalculia. I'm, you know, I like reading. I'm dyslexic, so hey, together.
Well, they weren't diagnosing dyscalculia in my day, and my mother, being savvy about you know, language-based learning disabilities, math is a language. It's a way too black and white a language, as far as I'm concerned. You know, that standing at the blackboard at an all-male school trying to multiply a fraction, and being pelted with objects by my classmates, you know, I didn't like it. So my mother arranged for me to have a tutor, and I didn't go to math class a lot and in high school, and that was an enormous difference. My only criteria to Robert Sweeney, who was a saint, was I don't ever want to see a math textbook again. And so we started with a fresh piece of paper. You know, we do a math problem. And, you know, I learned enough to pass the tests so that I could matriculate, you know, and get more paper, you know, and play the game, you know. But I still don't like it, you know, but it's there.
But you like reading.
I love reading, and that's my motivation. I mean, my mother instilling in me this notion that there were a lot of people that couldn't read. And I'll never forget in her home office, and we had a lot of space growing up, but I could hear the speech to text tutoring going on, which was, you know, this repetitious sounding out words, you know. I went out and got some headphones, because even at a distance it would go through the plaster walls, you know. So I got my Radio Shack headphones in Boston on Boylston Street, and if it wasn't for those headphones when I was home from school, I think I probably wouldn't have made it, you know. Because
apple.
It's tough to listen to them learning. It's tough. So, you know, I was exposed to that. And then my mother went and got Slingerland Literacy Institute training on the West Coast, because she wanted to, which is the Anna Gillingham's taking Orton Gillingham to the classroom, a classroom of dyslexics, which she did with Beth Slingerland just after the Second World War. My mom went and got that training, and then she was tackling, you know, public school classrooms on her own, at her own volition, pitching the opportunity to principals and superintendents, and doing her thing with success. And so I got that pretty early. And then as a grant maker in a family foundation, you know, we've always had our finger into, you know, things dyslexic. And I had an opportunity to stop fundraising for the Blue Blazer institutions, you know, that I had been associated with, and had a chance to get involved with more grant making and more fundraising in literacy in the reading field, if you will. And that's, kind of where we met in Norwalk, which I think was like, when was that first conference in Norwalk with the IDs? Was that
Brock and Frenette.
Was that 12 or something? It was like
12. It could have been
2012.
12. Where they brought all the dyslexics.
They had the dyslexics at one level, and then they had, the researchers. It was an interesting kind of mixture of, clinical and research types, and then some of the interesting, dyslexics who were poets and making movies like you and Peggy Stern and others who were there. That charming kid who brought down AOL. Do you remember him? They had that. I've forgotten his name, but he was charming. And they had Jack, who cracked the first dinosaur egg, and others. So it was very novel.
Jack Horner, yeah.
Jack Horner.
Yeah.
And it was very entertaining.
No, it was great. So that was 2012.
You had on your fishing vest and cameras all over, Leica here, Canon there, and
there was 3 filmmaking crews and everybody was dyslexic. That was like
Matthew Brady.
Brady was there.
God bless him.
Yep.
And
Scott Sniffen was there with another group. He might have been there with our group. I don't
Alan
know.
Alda's daughter was there, I think.
That's right.
Will Baker was there.
Will Baker was there.
Cynthia Hahn.
Oh yeah. Yeah. The old guard.
John Green and Jim Wendorf from NCLD. People that have retired, moved on to some extent.
Yeah.
And we're still at it.
Well, so but we're still at it. But so in those days we met, those dyslexic heavy. Now it's science of reading heavy. Now going back to okay, so you're dyscalculia, but talk to me about the statistics. We're not doing very well as
well. The numbers are bad, very bad.
Well, Julie Washington says in our film, we're not doing good by white kids.
50% are failing.
50% of the white kids are failing. So let's go into Latinos
like 73% Hispanic, Latinos.
How much?
73 something.
So wait a minute, but you were talking about how much money we're giving to the system.
85%, I think, African American black kids are. I mean, why even go? What I mean?
We have a crisis. We have a crisis that's happening in our nation. If this is what it is, and we're funding this crisis do they mean for us to fail? I mean, is it? We're not.
No, these teachers are
not the teachers, but the system.
The system.
Because you said it today. How many people have received diplomas to teach reading, but they don't.
I read interesting just the other day that about 1 million people have been given diplomas, to teach in America's public schools. And they're filling the positions that are out there. And while that's happening, if they're not being taught by the graduate schools to teach structured language, and if they're going towards leadership positions, and they're not cognizant of the fact that most of the textbooks that are purchased are by companies that crank out balanced literacy stuff, content, and they're not aware of this crisis. To me, I mean, I'm fascinated by my connections that we both share with the researchers, which is an ongoing thing that's got to keep going. Whether the money is private or NICHD or NIH or a university funding, kind of self-funded stuff, it's got to happen because we need that evidentiary homework done to just keep hitting the anvil with the hammer as to the science that's behind this type of instruction. This isn't a fad. This isn't new. This is deep, ongoing research. And it was there when Read Lion and Reading First and all that stuff was happening. It was there. and it's just compounds. And thanks to people like Will Baker and Ben Powers at TDF and bringing people together to discuss the science of reading research, it's in my mind it's a done deal, because I've got this urgent passion, having a sense that these kids that are failing, let's cut to the chase and just train these teachers and get tutoring the ones that are failing, because it's urgent. And I sometimes feel like that sense of urgency just doesn't exist in the system. What kind of accountability do we have? If you're in the legal profession or the medical profession, there's a high level of accountability. There's a high level of standardized instruction to get credentialed. The education community isn't anywhere. Carl Sagan could probably come up with a number of how far away the education community is in terms of the graduate schools, in terms of training people with some kind of standard.
I want to come up to where we go from.
What did he say?
From that.
Billions and billions. I used to get a kick out of him talking about billions and billions.
Billions and billions.
On the Tonight Show.
Well, we're gonna that's gonna be our cliffhanger. We're gonna leave it and we're gonna pick up from there, and when we want to talk about that. So we're gonna come back and you're gonna talk about the action plan. We're gonna talk about the action plan.
Okay.